welcome to this scrutiny meeting today on Monday, the 4th of March. You join us and running through the agenda. As I've said just before the meeting commenced, please note that obviously today's meeting may be recorded and may be broadcast on the authority's website and also may be used for training for Democratic Services Department. Okay, so just a little reminder there. We'll move straight into agenda item number 1, which is apologies for absence. No, okay. So just bear with me as I run through this. Yeah. Anna.
Lewis.
Yes.
Issues apologies, yeah.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, I have those and they are noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, that's all right. You're welcome. I'll just run through them. So we have apologies from our co-opted member, Hannah, from our Vice Chair, Gareth. Liz, I think, is poorly at the moment, so we'll just note her apologies. She may pop in online, but we'll just note her apologies for the time being. Paul is looking to join us, but may have to leave the meeting early. He's trying to join us. Jacob is going to join us, but maybe joining the meeting late. So just bear with me. And Lawrence is here with us. And also just formally welcoming Karen Lewis to our scrutiny. I know Karen was here as an observer last time, but formally welcoming her to our scrutiny. And if I just can note, just for admin, when we've got the agenda, Jane, if we could just note that again, with regards to delegates, we've just got a couple of surnames and not initials before it. I know it seems pretty pedantic, but it's just in case a member of the public is looking at, who our actual scrutiny members are. I did, Hannah, yes. Yeah, no, it's all right, no problem at all. Okay, so we'll move straight into agenda item number 2, and that's declarations of interest. So just as a reminder, if you think you have any declarations of interest, if you can note them now, Jeff.
Members that are within the ALM system.
Okay, Jeff, I'll note that, but you don't have to leave the meeting. That's absolutely fine. I think your knowledge in that will help this afternoon's meeting, but there's no specific declaration there apart from just having some families within the system. So that's absolutely fine, but thank you for noting it. Natalie.
Neurodivergence, obviously ALM's not a personal interest as such, but just so you're all aware that I've got ADHD and it gives me a different perspective, I suppose.
No problem at all. And again, that personal insight is really welcome because it does help us through this. But if ever there's anything as a chair I can support you with, just please remind me. Okay, I can't see any other microphones on, no hands online, so we'll continue into the agenda then. I remiss of me, sorry, I have had apologies from Councillor Geraint Thomas. Now, Councillor Geraint Thomas, just for all members to be aware, is the leader of the local authority, but is temporarily taking on the post of Cabinet Member for Education due to Councillor Michelle Jones stepping down temporarily from the post due to some personal issues. Okay, so Councillor Geraint Thomas will be joining us, but unfortunately can't join us today because of the clash with the WLGA meeting. Therefore, Sue will lead on the reports. Jeff.
Can I just ask a brief question on Councillor Geraint Thomas's appointment? Not his specifically, but it seems that councillors and officers and staff members were informed on the 23rd of February that he would be just taking over temporarily, but lay members haven't been informed. And this goes once again to the question that lay members need to be informed at the same time or roughly the same time as other councillors, and otherwise we get a two-tier system. And I know that's not the intention, but it is happening. So could that be noted, please, Chair?
Yeah, all noted, Jeff. I think obviously the formalities, the formal processes, obviously staff, officers, councillors, we have a group email. So I think sometimes it's simply a matter of that from an admin perspective, but I'll certainly make a note of that and ask the co-opted members are then notified post that original update going out if we have any further updates in the future. Okay, so as I've said, kindly Sue is going to lead our reports for us today in Geraint's absence. So the first report we have is a review of additional learning needs, ALN, following the implementation of ALN needs, the ALN and Educational Tribunal Wales Act in 2018. And obviously we're going to consider the report. But can I firstly give thanks to Gavin? Gavin, I know there are a number of questions were sent through to you prior to today, and I think it does definitely help give us some further insight. And obviously they came from our colleague Lawrence, who was chairing and leading on our ALN task and finish group. So if you haven't already had a chance to do so, those responses were emailed to you all. Okay, I do have sight of that with me, but it'll just help a greater understanding perhaps of some of the challenges that we have, questions that we have as well with ALN. But kindly, Lawrence has been able to join us. He may have been late, but he's actually here with us anyway. But Gavin, thanks again for taking the time to get those back to us. Okay, over to Sue.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Firstly, before I give some background into the report, under the third bullet point on 5.4, there is a typo. It reads there is a shared understating. It should actually read there is a shared understanding regarding the additional learning provision available in the college. So apologies for that. Members will be aware that an annual report has been, should be aware that an annual report has been provided to this scrutiny on progress regarding the introduction and implementation of the ALN net. And this has coincided with work undertaken to ensure that provision is appropriate to pupil need. So this report is looking at both ALN network and the work undertaken on provision. The purpose is to show progress made to comply with the duties set out in the Act and use this information to inform future priorities and to provide an update on the current provision. It also considers the recommendations from the Scrutiny Task and Finish group that the Chair referred to earlier on, that was chaired by Lawrence, who's a member of this committee. We haven't done those separately. Those are interwoven within the report, but you can see where those are actually fed in and into our work moving forward. The implementation of the Act commenced in 2021, with the ALN system being phased out over a period of 3 years until 2024, or August 2024. And during the 3 years, we have been working 2 systems, the special education needs, the SEN, and the ALN system. There's a lot of detail in the report on what we've actually undertaken, but we want to be somewhere where we've got inclusive education provision and practice underpinning the learning journey for all children and young people in Merthyr. And we want to ensure that our ALN systems and processes meet the statutory duties under the ALN net. They're embedded and are clearly communicated and understood by all partners and parents. So that sort of gives a very brief summary of the report, but over to members for questions.
Thank you, Sue. And just before I enter into questions, again, apologies, but to my left, just for everybody in the chamber, I know we've met them several times, but I should have realised and remembered to also say that Jill and Adele have joined us this afternoon as well. So welcome both. We're so used to Sue and Gavin, you see, then I was looking to my right all the time and forgot to look to my left. So apologies. Okay, thanks for that, Sue. Colleagues, I'm going to open it up then for any questions. Karen?
Thank you, Chair. It's just to ask again, Sue, what you said in your introduction there about an inclusive educational provision and practice, which underpins the learning journey for all children and young people. Has any consideration been given to establishing provision in the new diocesan faith school?
It wouldn't, but there would be no specific local authority learning base within that school, because obviously we place the children in those learning resource spaces. So the schools where there are learning resource spaces, whilst they're situated within the school, they actually belong to the local authority. They're not school based. So within the new faith school, we would expect, you know, the additional learning provision to be provided for by those children, but we wouldn't be looking to set up a specific class there within Blessed Carlo Acutus.
Do you think is something that you could aspire to as a county?
If there was surplus capacity within, but it wouldn't be specifically for the children in Blessed Carlo Acutus, it would be for children across the county. And you may have the situation where there are no children that are actually on the roll of Blessed Carlo Acutus in that class. So we would only look at it if there was surplus capacity. And I'm hoping that there won't be surplus capacity in the school if we've done our figures correct, if we've done our figures properly.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Anna next, and then I'll come to you, Lawrence. Anna.
Thank you. picking up on one of the recommendations of the ALN Task and Finish group previously, and specifically to review how the current provision can be improved to reduce pressure on frontline staff, but also manage the anxiety of parents and carers. To what extent do you think work done over the past year has addressed the latter issue of managing the anxiety of parents and carers? And to what extent do you think that is in control of the local authority, or would that sit more with schools?
That's a really good question. I think in terms of the parents first, from a local authority perspective, we've done a huge amount of work around the shift from SEN to ALN. So historically, you would be seeking to support parents and sort of head off those anxieties in a system that's kind of already established. So in addition to capacity and those kind of things, we've also had a very big shift in terms of the whole foundation of ALN support. So we've done a huge amount of work with schools via ALNCO forums so that they're skilled up and able to work with parents to explain those changes. We've also appointed a number of IDP officers. We've got Jill would know how many IDP officers have we got now?
4 IDP officers.
So we've got 4 IDP officers that work directly with schools and with parents around those concerns, and because of the new system and the way it's set up, those concerns we become aware of those concerns earlier than we might have previously under the old code. We've revamped the website information, and we can direct to that. We work very, very closely with Bernardo's and with Snap Cymru. But largely it's underpinned by us working closely with schools, and when we're asked to be involved with a particular case, supporting the schools in working with the parents, a lot of the time we aren't aware of the concerns, and the schools are, and therefore when we become involved, sometimes it's to kind of unpick what's going on and actually then get involved and meet with the parents in the school. But I think it's an ongoing area of focus for us. We're very conscious that what we've done with the website is quite basic at present, and we need to develop that more. But we're also aware that people don't naturally go to the website on their phones. They're more likely to ask a friend or someone in the school, somebody they know. And so the information in terms of sharing it and how we present that needs to be wider than sort of the traditional old model of put it on the website. So it's a multifaceted approach of working closely with schools, making sure that we're responding to needs as we're made aware of them. And it's fair to say that we've been made aware of a growing number, where parents will feel they want to have a discussion with the local authority. And then obviously, expanding on how we share information across social media and that kind of.
I just add to that as well. We have a standing agenda item on our ALN panel every week for complex cases. So any questions or concerns from parents that come into local authority can be triaged there, and we assign complex caseworker to contact parents and respond.
Thanks. So picking up on that and those conversations that happen between the local authority and the parents, would you describe those as informal support, or are we talking about the review process that parents, I can believe, obviously, if it's determined by the school that a child does not require an IDP, for example, they can then ask the local authority to review the decision. So I'm just trying to determine whether that's what you're discussing, or if those are informal discussions, to what extent that review process is being utilised by parents.
It would be both. It would be both. It would be informal, and also there is the panel that would determine whether or not an IDP is the right approach. And then we feed back to school, and school would then feed back to parent.
We get direct phone calls into the team, myself and Sue as well. We get council queries from MPs, and queries raised from schools to work with as well. So it's both informal and formal.
Thanks. So my further question to that was whether any figures are available about how many formal reviews have been requested.
Don't have that, but we do. Can we get that? Yeah, we should be able to get that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can share that.
Okay, thank you, Anna, and we'll just make a note that we'll get that information then to all as well. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Lawrence next, and then Jamie after Lawrence.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Gavin, for your response to the written questions. I have looked at them, so thank you for that. Yeah, regarding the steering group, which is mentioned in 5.8, because as you mentioned in the report, there's been a number of things that has been put in place during the past year. Would it be the case then that the steering group would have assessed, if you like, the recommendations from each of those task and finish groups before they would have been then put forward as a recommendation?
Yeah, in terms of the role of the steering group, obviously, when the steering group was established, we worked out what task and finish groups were actually needed, what that work plan needed to look like. To be fair, that elements of those things have morphed over time, but only in discussion, not from us deciding to do something different, but in discussion with head teachers. LRB provision being one where there's a real sense from the head teachers that they wanted to look at the finance, and so we prioritized that over other areas of focus. But yes, the expectation is that the overall agenda and the overall program would be monitored by the steering group, and that the sort of the operational work would be done at the task and finish group level.
But to the actual steering group then, if you like, ultimately have the feedback from those task and finish groups and agree to them.
Yeah, we ensure there's feedback from every task and finish group into the steering group. There is overlap, so that there are a number of head teachers that are on the steering group that are also involved in some of the task and finish groups as well. So there's a further link there. But yeah, the agenda for steering group will ensure that there's we go through the various task and finish groups and provide updates.
Yeah. So I presume then there's been quite a regular number of meetings that's been happening by the steering group.
Not as many as we would have liked. A couple of them have had to have been cancelled due to head teacher unavailability. But we've got one next Monday, and then there's another one in June, and we're open to schedule additional ones if there's a need to do that. So as much as when at the beginning of the academic year we programmed out the meetings, we're not opposed to adding additional ones, but we are incredibly conscious of the pressures on head teachers at the moment in terms of their commitment to meetings and their availability to attend. So there's a real pressure in that way too.
Okay, thank you. Just on the same subject then, regarding I know you said the panel has been slightly revised in the way it's working and so on. So to what degree then has again, the steering group had sight of what is happening there and whether there's any further, if you like, recommendations of improvement in that area?
Yeah, so again, one thing is all members of the steering group will be on the rota to attend panel. There will be, Jill will be able to say exactly, but there will be head teacher representation from the steering group on the group, the task and finish group that looked at the policy and processes around the changes to panel. And we keep those processes in a fairly open hand, really. You obviously have to set processes in place for a set period of time, but we're not saying this should be the process and the way we do it forever. We've basically got this in place for a year, and then we'll review it with head teachers. But the feedback that we've had from head teachers is that one, they've benefited themselves from seeing how panel operates, and then two, from a local authority perspective, we've benefited from the expertise that both the ALNCOs and the head teachers can provide to panel.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lawrence. Jamie, next. Jamie, just before you start, Jacob, welcome to the meeting. And colleagues, just to let you know, unfortunately, due to some technical issues, Paul has had to give his apologies because he just can't get online despite us sending a couple of links. So, Jamie, over to you.
So, thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question is just in terms of the training that's been delivered then. So how effective has the training been for the school staff? Like, do we have an indicator of the impact it's had since they've undergone that training? And in a wider context, do we believe it's had an impact on service delivery and management, as well as there been bigger changes as a result of going through this new training as well?
Jill, can you take that, please?
We have a very, very strong network in Merthyr. I think we benefit from being a small local authority, which is one of those situations where we've got very close cluster working, and that has been recognised at Welsh Government level as being excellent practice. We've got very strong cluster leads who then support all Elencos within their cluster. So we have a process of sharing best practice, supporting new Elencos, because the difficulty for lots of schools is making sure that they have the right people in the right places. It's a senior leadership role, and we encourage all schools to have consider succession planning. So we put in place training not only for Elencos but new Elencos as well, induction training, and that happens twice a year. So schools now are going down the road of very much so we're encouraging them to have an ALN team that supports them should an Elenco get promotion, and this is happening quite a lot because it's a strategic leadership role within the school. Our Elencos are moving on to deputy headship, which is what we want to see, and hopefully headship as well. So I think the systems in place in Merthyr are very good for professional development. Is there anything else you wanted to ask me about training?
I was just saying, in terms of those ALN teams that are in place, I'm assuming that they have a review process of how they're doing in terms of CPD and how effective that training is being. That you said it happens twice a year, but I'm assuming that they're doing that consistently, reviewing how they're learning and how that impact is.
Yeah, and the Elenco forums, just for you to know, are attended by 100% of Merthyr schools, which is, it shows that it's valuable for them as well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't get the full attendance.
Chair, can I just add in as well that what's pleasing about, one of the things pleasing about the report is that 5.28 down to 5.33 are all really about training and professional development, and you know, we recognise that there's a real, you know, on the one hand we can say there's a growing complexity in terms of pupil need, but on the other hand you then have to commit to, okay, how do we upskill staff, how do we support staff to manage this, and not just in mainstream but in our resource spaces, in our special school too, and in our pupil referral unit. And so there's quite a wide range of training that's gone on, additional work with LRBs. We're seeking to tap in more widely, and with the skill set that is in our special school, and they're actually doing a day's training tomorrow for one of our set-ins, and so we recognise, I think, you know, we recognise there's a need there to ensure that the local authority is committed to upskilling staff so that they can also work with the pupils that are coming through their doors.
Yeah, that's great. The only other question I had was just in terms of where we are now then and where we're looking to go. So do we feel confident that we can actually achieve that and we'll meet the areas that are outlined in section 6? So from an officer perspective, are there any perceived obstacles that you might see in terms of us achieving those goals as we go along that journey? And particularly given the context of where we're at in the economy wise and the challenges we'll face over the few years, are there any concerns that might impact us achieving those goals?
That's a really good question. I think 6.1, we're confident that the transition, I think it has gone well. I think Welsh Government have recognised the good practice that's in Merthyr, and you know, as much as a change at this level can be smooth, effective, and equitable, I think it's, you know, a lot of work has gone on to ensure that. Yes, there will have been bumps, and there are bumps along the way, but largely 6.1 has gone well. I think 6.2 does you touched on kind of pressures, budget, and those kind of things. That is definitely a focus that we've recognised. So at the beginning of this academic year, we looked at what did we want one of the themes to be around our working with schools, and it was around inclusivity, not necessarily inclusion, but a broader inclusivity. And so we've got a conference with our schools on that subject that will fortunately be largely led by our schools who have, we have schools with some excellent practice, and what we want to do is tap into that. So that one will be a bit longer term. I think our ALN systems and processes are on track and in line with ALNet. And are getting embedded. There are some additional parts that Welsh Government are looking to around online IDPs and those kind of things that we're in line with where Welsh Government would expect, but they're taking longer than they would have expected to get to where they need to get to. The principles document is drafted and discussions. It will be on the steering group agenda for next week. Funding mechanisms. Currently, in terms of discussions with our schools are largely happy with them. I think we committed to review them, because when the last change was made, it was changed and there was a recognition that it would be a pilot and therefore there would be a review. So we're committing to that review cycle, and obviously, the current financial pressures will have an impact in terms of that one, I would imagine, in terms of views of how that's approached. Availability of specialist provision, we've worked really closely with Greenfield to increase capacity, both with demountables, but also a sizable increase in capacity from September, somewhere between 30 and 35 additional places coming online there. And also the work with LRBs in terms of Dowlais, Cyfarthfa, increasing capacity in our complex primary bases. ALNCO, sorry, I'm just rattling through these. ALNCO forum, Jill's already mentioned. It's a really excellent forum, and schools really value it, and it really is used not just to communicate information, but to see them develop professionally in their understanding and in their learning. And the education workforce is confident to be able to meet the needs of all learners. Again, that comes back to that training need. And I think, if we look at, I think Jill would agree, if we look at the picture of ALN at the moment, that training need is just going to be an ongoing need. And, we're going to have to look at where and how we meet that.
So, sorry, Chair, just one more question there, just in terms of what was said on 6.5. It's just in terms of the review. So do we have an idea of when that review is looking to take place?
Summer term.
There we are.
Summer term. Okay, that's great. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. Natalie, I'm going to come to you next.
I think Gavin's answered pretty much everything I was going to ask, to be honest. But I'm just going to sort of double check. Thank you, because you've given loads of information. I wanted to ask about lived experience representation. So I know that you said you work with Barnardo's and Snap Cymru. Any other partnerships or agencies that are involved? I mean, they're both two fantastic examples. So I was pleased to hear that when you mentioned those earlier.
I mean, we do work very closely with Barnardo's and
Yeah.
with Snap Cymru. Trying to think.
I think we're not opposed to working with any group. I think, historically, sometimes there's been a reticence to work with parental partnership groups, but we found here that both the quality of the staff that we're working with in Barnardo's and Snap has been excellent, and we see them as a real partner in terms of meeting need and addressing the concerns of parents and supporting schools and ultimately ensuring that people's needs are being met. So we don't see them as we see them as part of the team really that's around schools and around pupils.
Perfect.
One of the things we've also done in one of the schools in the north of the county, in the Pen-y-Dre cluster, is actually get those parents together, because as I explained, they're not the natural parents of that school.
Yeah.
So it's actually set up parental groups where the parents of the children in the LRBs have the opportunity to meet together and to talk about their experiences, not quite the lived experiences of the children, but actually those experiences of the parents, where
Yeah.
you do it outside the school gate if it's your local school, but set up those groups for those parents. It's worked quite well, and it's something that we would look to actually expand.
Yeah, I think
moving forward.
that was something I was kind of going to move on to, was doing something like that, because I understand that you need to an extent to keep the local authority and the process side of things separate to parents. But I think that's a really good thing to come on to. I think we need with community focused schools to look at having those relationships. Obviously, I'll bang my drum for that as well as usual. But I think that's a really key thing, because you really need that lived experience voice as well, because a lot of the parents of the neurodivergent children, sometimes they don't even realise it, but they're neurodivergent themselves. So I think there's a wealth of information to tap into there. So perfect, you've covered that one. And then there's quite a bit in here. Obviously, there's things in here about growing the education workforce with regards to ALN, particularly growing the ALN leadership capacity. But what about the front line, as in teachers and LSAs, and supporting them with training, especially with there's a massive increase. I know we discussed it in the LRB workshop where we talked about masking. So children where they're conforming in class, or yeah, they're conforming basically, and they could be hitting their milestones, but maybe they're not achieving what they're potentially capable of achieving. Is there any kind of work around that, or yeah, any sort of thoughts on that?
I think we address a lot of training, particularly at the moment with our very youngest children. So we're well aware that we spend a lot of money putting in place LSAs in schools, and we need to make sure that they've got the right skill sets, because the nature of our population is changing. We've got a lot of very young children with very complex needs, and schools need to have the confidence to be able to support their learning. So there's a huge rollout of attention autism training and PECS training, working with speech and language therapies. So we've worked very closely with health as well. But certainly with ASD, our Elenco Forum is always a base for training. We have a standing item every Elenco Forum with health. So occupational therapy, have done provided some sensory training for us at the request of schools, and that was attended by I think 30 odd schools. So there is a lot of the recognition is there that the schools do need to be upskilled, and recognise that, and will come to local authority.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Lawrence, before I bring you back in, I'm just mindful I've got Jacob, he's arrived and hasn't had the opportunity to ask anything yet. So Jacob, I'm going to come to you first, then Lawrence, I'll come to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Apologies for being late. I just wanted to speak about 5.11. So obviously it mentions about appropriate representation for educational professionals to ensure the decision making is fair, equitable for all learners with ALN. I was just wondering, will there be any possibilities of speaking to those students who are identified with ALN and speaking their minds in the decision making? Because after all, we are trying to help them for their own decision. But I think it's always good to make sure we get all people's viewpoints of the changes and what's best for them.
Jill, do you just want to touch on how pupil views are reflected?
Yeah, as part of the person-centred practice, this underpins everything in Merthyr now with the new IDP process, and person-centred practice is at the heart of everything that we do. So children and young people are always involved in the decision making. It's a fact we have something called a capture tool, and where we capture all the everybody's viewpoints who attend that IDP review. So the IDP review itself is completely underpinned by pupil voice, if you like, and student voice.
Okay. Sorry, just two more things, if that's all right. I just wanted to speak about obviously the Kavartha pilot. So that would be 5.16. So obviously it mentions that the LRB provides a highly specialist and structured learning environment. I was wondering if maybe you can go into a little bit more of detail. That is, I know obviously this is during the 23 and 24 academic year, which we're still a part of, but I was wondering if we do have any data in regards to that.
we know anecdotally that it's going well, that it's meeting people need, and that it's it's proving of benefit to those pupils that attend. Jill will know more than me, so I'll hand over to Jill.
We've got 6 pupils now at the moment. Started off with 5 pupils, very high adult pupil ratio. The provision is for pupils with complex ASD and associated behavioural needs, who would not manage in any mainstream school, and we could possibly be looking at out-of-county placements, because we know that they need a very, very bespoke, specialised approach. We worked very closely with a high school in Lanishan, who's already trialled this and have got a very successful LRB, and it's great to work with other authorities because they've already gone through this process and established really successful provisions. So we worked with a lady called Maria Prosser, who has actually left Lanishan and gone to establish another school in Barry, another provision. We've established a very, very bespoke provision for 5 to 6 pupils. And we would not want to increase that capacity because they are so complex. There's really close working with the families as well. So yeah, it's been very successful so far.
Sorry, one last thing. So just going slowly down, 5.17, obviously there's mention about consolidating of basic skills, social skills and interaction skills. So I was just wondering if there's any statistics you can provide that shows that these 3 skills are focusing on their criteria, key criteria figure, sorry. And obviously, how do you manage to identify who needs the most? Because obviously, if you use like autism as an example, obviously that's a spectrum, and obviously not all autistic people are the same. Some are much more better with social skills than others. So I was just curious a little bit about that.
Would you want us to talk about the curriculum and approach, or?
Yeah.
I think it is they're all very different pupils in that setting, and they all have very individualized approach to the curriculum. And also it's a very nurturing environment as well. But the reason it's successful is because a high level of skilled staff within the setting, and also the very close working with the pupils' parents. And before any pupil is admitted into that setting, the staff go to the home and visit the family and get to know the pupil first of all. And that's a luxury to be able to do that. But we can only do that because we've got a high level of adult pupil ratio there.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Jacob, thank you. Okay, colleagues, I'm going to go back to Lawrence and I'm going to conclude questioning on this item with Lawrence and just see if there are any comments or observations. Lawrence, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Jamie reminded me of a couple of questions when he brought up where we want to be. Just a question on 6.3, it says the LALN systems and processes meet statutory duties under the Act. Under where we want to be. So are we saying then our current systems of process do not meet the Act?
No, I touched on it earlier. There are some elements that haven't come online yet. So, for example, the online IDP. So there are still some developments at Welsh Government level around how they want local authorities to function in terms of systems at local authority level. So we basically, are keeping that under review, and we'll ensure that we're in line with Welsh Government requirements.
Yeah, actually, it's just a bit misleading the way you worded that there.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, just as you said it, and then as I'm reading, I'm thinking we could have made that clearer. So apologies.
No, it's all right. That's fine. It's just you sort of masking perhaps Welsh Government's lack of support on that one. And the other one was 6.4, and it says the development of the Merthyr Tydfil Principles document articulate an agreed set of principles which apply when determining whether it would be reasonable for the LA. Now, I would have thought that the LA are the owners of the additional learning provision, so therefore, I'm just wondering are you saying there that the assumption is that schools are the ones who would normally provide it, and therefore it's up to them to try to work out whether it's reasonable for the LA to support? Whereas I would have thought it would be the other way around.
I'll let Jill come in on that one.
We have to work, every local authority has to work with schools to agree a set of principles to determine whether an IDP is local authority
Of course.
maintained or
course.
school maintained. And that's taken, we've been on a journey with that one. There's obviously specified groups that we know straight away from the code that those IDPs have to be local authority maintained. For example, CLAR and children who are dual placed. In Merthyr, we have worked with our schools and we are now maintaining all IDPs for children in specialist provision. And then we have agreed, and we are going through a process in agreeing what else do we agree should be a local authority maintained IDP. And I think that's the difficulty, because you have to make sure that you are in line with the wording of the code and the expectations of the code, and also that there's clear understanding with schools. So what we are looking at is agreeing the wording of in the principles document to make sure that the severity of need is at the heart of everything, but also that it is a reasonable decision, because it's the same document whether it's local authority maintained or school maintained. I think this is the sticking ground really, is that an IDP is a legal document, it's a statutory document, whether it's held by the school or by the local authority. The reasonable part is worded quite clearly in the code, and it is about whether it would be unreasonable for a school to maintain that IDP. And what we are working on together, we've got to that point now, is determining what is unreasonable for a school to maintain. So it's not just about funding for LSAs, it's about that bigger picture of the amount of time spent, the work with outside agencies, with very complex pupils in school. But it's always related to severity of need and whether it's reasonable for a school to secure the ALP.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. It's just the phrasing, I suppose, that is put in there, because as you rightly said, the code mentions about when it's unreasonable for a school to provide various things. So therefore, I just it doesn't seem to sound right to me about the reasonable provision with the local authority, but that's my interpretation.
We've got to a phrase at the moment that we've agreed, which is it's agreed that the severity of the individual pupil's additional learning need would require additional learning provision, which could only be provided with intensive daily adult support for a prolonged duration of time. So what we're really looking at is pupils who've got a very high level of need and need intensive daily support for a very long period of time. That's what we've agreed. I'm sure that document will be amended and there will be probably more detail added to it.
Do you know when it's anticipated that document will be finished, do you say?
Well, we've got our final task and finish group on the, I think it's on the 18th of March, and then that will be go back to the steering group for ratification.
Okay, thank you. Chair, a question for yourself. I don't know whether you're going to touch on this in your summary, but in the recommendations of the report, 2.2, it says members to consider if there are other aspects they wish to scrutinise. Were you going to come on to that, or is that worth touching on now?
No, that is something I've just been discussing with Jane as you were asking some of those questions. So as part of the agenda today, obviously we're looking at the forward work plan, and as you know, we always have an element of reflection as well. So we'll just include that within that, because we do need to start planning our next cycle and our forward work plan. So within a matter of weeks, Lawrence, we'll be adding to that, and then I'll sit down with Sue Geraint and the Vice Chair, Ely and Jane, to pan that out then as well, following recommendations from this scrutiny and following discussions with all members.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you for that. Are there any further comments, not questions, on the report?
On point 9.1, he says about the 5 areas for the future well-being of future generations is missing integration. Another point.
No problem, thank you. I'm sure we'll note that down and make sure that it's added next time we discuss this. Okay, thank you guys. Okay, thank you, Jill and Gavin. Happy for you to stay if you want to stay for the next report, which is agenda item number 4, and that is attendance in schools. So obviously I'm going to go through to Sue again just to give us an overview on the report.
We've got to, can I just come back to what Natalie said?
Oh yes,
I
sorry.
think we got under 9, it shouldn't actually refer to the well-being, the 5 ways of working. It actually refers to the corporate plan. So it should only have sort of one of the 4 elements of the corporate plan. So it doesn't, so I don't know which version you're looking at, because it's
4 listed, so that's why I looked at what it would be.
yeah,
Because
there is
when I looked at
there is something missing from that, but
Yeah.
for whatever reason, that isn't what you should have had. You should have just had where it sits under the corporate plan, which is
Okay.
aspirational, mirth, tittle, focus on learning.
Yeah.
And please don't ask me what the other ones are, because I can't remember.
Can I
that goes off on a well-being objective
yeah.
tangent. And I thought, that's
That's fine.
lovely,
It's
thank you.
summarised in 9.2. It says this report relates to the following objectives, the corporate plan,
Yeah.
acting for a better tomorrow. So yeah, the
Okay.
aspirational one and the healthier Merthyr one. Okay, no problem. Thanks, guys. Okay, so back onto agenda item number 4, and that is attendance in schools. Over to you, Sue.
Okay,
Is it you, Sue? Oh,
yes, it is. Thank you, Chair. I will flick back now to the beginning. Okay, this again is a report that comes to members on an annual basis and provides members with an update on the attendance at primary and secondary, and actually the use of available grant funding. The key guidance is attached for you, which is the Welsh Government guidance entitled All Wales Attendance Framework, and we've also attached the document that came out last October, the Belonging, Engaging and Participating, which guidance was developed to support schools, PIUs, parents, carers and local authorities with improving learner engagement and attendance. Your members will be aware improving attendance has been a constant focus for the council, and in the previous administration, the chair of this committee and another 2 members of the committee undertook a review of attendance and produced a significant report which we worked on throughout that time. The link between good attendance and learning is clear. If the children don't attend, they won't learn, and they won't have the best possible chance in life and maximise their potential. We have undertaken significant work to improve attendance, as it's shown in the report. And if within the report, it actually shows the gap the gap between our previous attendance and our current attendance is narrower than some of the other local authorities, which is positive for us. However, we don't rest on our laurels, and whilst there has been an improvement over time, we do accept that there is much work to be done to close the gap further and to consolidate improvements in a positive attendance trend, particularly a reduction in persistent absenteeism. And with Welsh Government changing the barrier to 90%, this is a key focus for us moving forward. So over to members for questions.
thank you. Okay, so I'll open it up to the floor. Any questions on this particular item? Clive.
How have they altered the definition of persistent absenteeism? It's 90% now. What was it before?
80.
Oh, right. Yeah. Thanks.
So what Wales followed England in terms of introducing 90%. So it was in England before, and then Wales have followed suit.
Thank you, Clive. Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Can I turn to fixed penalty notices and EWS? Yeah, so how many schools do not have an SLA with EWS, please? And how does this affect the recording of fixed penalty notice and the resultant actions of EWS?
I'll ask Adele to answer that one.
So we've got a fixed penalty. This is on, yeah. We've got a fixed penalty notice code of conduct in place. That is in place for all schools where.
Sorry, I can't hear it. It's me, not you.
Sorry. We've got a fixed penalty notice code of conduct that's in place. and that's in place for all schools, whether they are in the service level agreement or not. So within that, we've got a process where the schools will refer to us with regards to whether they want us to follow with a warning letter for fixed penalty notices, or whether they want a straight fine, for example, for a holiday. So we basically facilitate that process and support the schools. So that is whether, you know, they are in a service level agreement or not. So that's across the board because it is a statutory function.
Right. Okay. So
in terms of numbers, we've got, so we've got all our.
Gavin, sorry, can I
sorry.
just interject a second? Can I just double check? Does anybody own a vehicle, an Astra, with the number plate V017BGE? Can I just check? Anybody in the chamber? No, that's okay. Then it's blocking in a vehicle. So apologies. Just needed to check. Gavin, back to you.
So in terms of numbers, all of our high schools are bought into the SLA. And in terms of primary, it does fluctuate, and some of that is led by budget, but also led by what they've got themselves. So, for example, if they've got a flow themselves, they may feel that there's a bit of replication, and they can go with one or the other. Adele, roughly how many primary schools are within the SLA?
I think there are only 4 that are not in there now. Yeah. So it's the majority, yeah, and all the secondary schools. Which
Sorry, the vast majority are in the SLA.
okay. Thank you. So fixed penalty notices, and you'll know, Gav, this is one of my pet hates, but you'll be aware that it looks like the information you gave us at 5.13, that the table, when I break it all down, it seems to me that roughly 50% of fixed penalty notices only result in revenue gained by the EWS. In other words, they're effective. There seems to be a lot of withdrawn penalty notices, and there's a very small criteria, if I'm reading correctly from the document. That one, yeah. There's a very small criteria, one of which is medical, and I get that, yeah. But the other 2, it seems there's sort of 16 odd % that come back, or 89 in this particular case. Yeah. So what are the reasons for that coming back? And are any of them legalistic?
Legalistic as in?
As in legal people have said to you, you're not going to get anywhere with prosecution.
Yeah.
You've done it wrong.
Okay.
With regards to withdrawing. Oh, sorry. Can I?
No, yes, please do.
With regards to withdrawing a fixed penalty notice, we withdraw a fixed penalty notice if a fine isn't paid. So that would, if a fine isn't paid within the stated 42 days, we withdraw a fixed penalty notice then, in order for us to go forward with the prosecution. So that's why, you know, it may seem that there is a high number of withdrawals then with regards to the fines, but we have to do that. It's basically closing the case because it hasn't been paid within the 42 days. We basically close that account down, so that means that we have to withdraw that fine back, and then we go forward with the normal non-attendance prosecution then.
You're saying 89 were issued and 48 resulted in prosecutions. So
it is for other reasons as well. We withdraw a fine basically if a fine is given out and then further down the line, during the period that the parent has got to pay the fine, it comes to light that they have medical evidence, or it comes to light for, you know, another reason, and the school agree, because obviously we can't do that without the school's agreement, then, you know, we will withdraw a fine with regards to that, and also to prosecute as well. So there are a number of reasons why we withdraw a fine, but a lot of them will be to go forward with prosecution as well.
yeah, and I get that, and I see, and I see that you need to be flexible. However, if we're not treating everybody fairly and equally, then that's not quite correct, I would venture to suggest. So there are only 3 reasons, and you've just suggested there might be others.
It's on a case by case basis. Obviously, when we get a request for a fine or for it's a straight fine for a holiday, but it's a warning letter first for an unauthorised absence, and then we give a 15-day period, you know, for the pupil to improve attendance. But when we get the requests in, we would, you know, expect the school to look at it on a case by case basis. You know, there's no blanket approach, then there shouldn't be a blanket approach. So we would expect the school to have worked with the parent, you know, to have a look at the reasons why there are unauthorised absences, etc. And then that fine is sent to us, the request is sent to us. So, you know, there is an expectation that they would have asked for medical evidence and everything would have been done before. But that's not always the case, which was why further on down the line then we do get, you know, some cases where there is evidence or suggestions. It could be that, you know, a family has gone on holiday and only one parent has taken them, but the fine has gone out to both. And then it's up to the discretion of the school as to whether, you know, they will fine one or two parents. And then maybe we'll say, look, you know, withdraw it for the one parent and not the other. So, you know, there are sort of reasons why we would go down to withdraw a fine.
Okay, 2 questions result from that, Chair, if you don't mind. So aren't parents jointly and severally liable?
Yes, yeah. Parents are, yeah. Obviously, you know, there's joint responsibility. But we do ask that, and we do it, you know, say to the schools, then obviously, you know, fine should be for both parents. But if there is evidence that if a family are split, then, you know, for example, so they separated and the one parent, you know, it doesn't agree for that child to go and they go with dad, you know, and mum is saying, well, I didn't agree that, then. But the fine has gone out to both, you know, so there's lots of, you know, we have to look at the dynamics of the family as well.
So that particular part is covered in your fixed penalty notice code, because if you send it to the wrong address or the incorrect address,
That's right, yeah, and that's another reason for withdrawing as well. Yeah,
I
that's
get
right,
that.
yeah,
I get
yeah.
that. But Chair, surely before head teachers or whoever it is makes a recommendation to ask EWS to submit a fixed penalty notice, they should have done all their, I'd call it due diligence, but you understand all the checks and balances, yeah, to find out why the child is away. Yeah, if there's medical evidence, I accept that if you've asked for medical evidence and it isn't there, you give them a certain amount of time. I think it says 15 days in there, but to bring that forward. But once you've done that, if you've issued an FPN, at that point, there's only very limited circumstances you can take it away.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think what Adele is sort of saying, Jeff, is inevitably some things still may just come to light that even perhaps the school isn't totally aware of. So there could be the estrangement between the two custodial parents, if you know what I mean. So I think, you know, sometimes that isn't always apparent to the school because, you know, they aren't always fully aware of perhaps some circumstances. So I think that's what happens sometimes. And then medical stuff as well. You know, it's understanding that from the parental point of view, you know, they may say, oh, well, it was for a medical reason, but we need that evidence to back it up, so that may then cause a different decision or a delay in the decision as well. But inevitably, I imagine, looking at our officers as well, you know, these circumstances are few and far between, but can actually have an impact on the FPN decision then, or the next decision.
Yeah, it is a small amount, you know, because we issue hundreds really of, you know, of fixed penalty notices and warning letters, you know, throughout the year. It can go into that large, you know, amount. So there is a small amount, and most of the withdrawals would be because the fine hasn't been paid, and then obviously we need to do that in order for us to go forward with the prosecution.
Yeah, okay, I see that. So
can I just chip in one? What might be useful to say that the guidance from Welsh Government around FPNs is that the head teacher is the one who's empowered, and the local authority then administers. So the function around that is largely kind of sort of the back office end, but obviously the decision making and the discussion around reasons and so forth sits with the school. So
okay, Chair, I've got lots of questions, so I'm not going to ask them. With your permission, yeah, might I write to Gav through Jane, and then perhaps he can answer the questions and pass them on to the scrutiny committee if it needed to be.
Yeah, absolutely fine. We've got a couple of colleagues who are also going to ask questions, so please feel free to strike those off if they're then asked and answered, Jeff. And then subsequently, if we haven't answered them, then yes, please send them through to me, and we'll make sure that again we have those answers for you. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to Claire Jones next, and I'm going to come to Lawrence.
Thank you. I think following on from Jeff, my question is regarding Clara, and obviously with the child looked after, if they're not attending school with a fixed penalty notice, you can't penalise yourself. So do you not think there is something else we need to do? Because children who are in residential, they don't fall under any fixed penalty notice, and I don't think there is anything that then entices that child to want to go to school, because as much as you can try to get a child to school, if they're not going to go when they are in a child looked after situation, there's nothing. If I was a parent, I can say, I'm taking you to school, I am taking you, I will sit there. With a child looked after, it's completely different. I just wondering, you know, how do you work around the fixed penalty notices with that situation, please?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I think the expectation, obviously, you know, collectively with a corporate parent, and the expectation with having a Clara education manager will be working closely with foster carers and so on. And when they're in and out, you know, in a residential setting out of county, we'll be working very closely with them. And I know, you know, Jess does that. We can provide you with some further. I can ask her and Adele to just pull a written answer together for you, because I think it's an interesting point in terms of what are the levers. You know, I guess we assume naturally that because they're Clara and because they'll have a social worker, because there's an education manager that's coordinating that pressure and you know that approach will kind of be a different one. But I can't say hand on heart that that's the case. So yeah.
Yeah.
So happy for that to be an action for Adele, just to liaise with Jess to pull a response together. That would be good.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Claire, no problem at all. Lawrence, I'm going to come to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Regarding the guidance mentioned in 3.2, belonging, engaging and participating, did it bring forward anything new for people to take on board, or is it just bringing together previous knowledge gained and recorded from multiple sources into a single document?
In a nutshell, that's exactly what it's done. I think when local authorities saw it, they didn't necessarily see anything new. Having said that, the one bit that was new, it was the first time that Welsh Government have, in writing, had a view on reduced timetables, and it's been that section that has attracted the most kind of focus, because that's not been reflected in any other document, and is, you know, as is quite a clear line from Welsh Government about how reduced timetables should and shouldn't be used. So largely, it's, you know, we welcome the document because it does pull together a range of information and, you know, some areas of focus, but largely most local authorities have already been applying that kind of learning and acting on the things that are mentioned. But it gives us an opportunity when we're looking at our business planning. It gives us, alongside, there's been a couple of ESTIN thematics around attendance as well. It gives us extra focus in terms of you know, planning going forward.
Okay, thank you. In section 5.4, there's a number of statistics quoted there. Would it be possible to explain them, because I can't seem to correlate what they're saying, to be frank.
Yeah, so we should have put it in a table, to be honest. So but basically, and Adele, correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about comparison between 2 years, and we're talking about the two thresholds of 80 and 90%. So if you look at the bottom one, currently we've got 27 and 42% that are persistently absentee pupils on that 90% threshold. But the previous year, when we didn't have 90% and we had the 80% threshold, it was 7% and 19.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, so
So we didn't have the 90% for the 22-23 year. So we've basically reflected two different sets of data.
Yeah.
Two different sets of data.
No, I thought that might be the case, but it didn't say at the end of it for the period 23-24. So that
No,
would
that's a valid point.
That would have made it clearer for me. Okay, thanks. Right then, 5.4. Yeah, 5.16, 5.16. Is it correct that staffing changes have been made and the finances now coming out of the education budget?
Say that again, please.
Yeah, if you look at 5.16,
yeah,
it mentioned staffing changes, employed an additional member of staff, etc. So previously that was, I believe, done under a grant.
Yeah.
But now, is it a case of that's coming out of the education budget now instead?
No, we still have grant funding. So Welsh Government reduced the grant funding available, but we still have some level of Welsh Government grant funding.
Yeah, because I suppose that comes to the next question. So how long do we know is that grant available for?
We've had it guaranteed to the end of this, obviously this financial year. Adele, do we have any information about next financial year? I don't think your mic's on.
Apologies. We haven't had it confirmed, but I believe that it is going to be continued. It just hasn't been, confirmed
published
yet. Yeah.
So is it a case then that staffing level is dependent on the grant going forward?
Some of it will be, some of it won't. So, for example, we did a piece of work with one of our high schools, and we used grant funding, and it was successful. And then they basically, when there wasn't funding available for that particular activity, they've taken that on themselves. So, and in relation to, for example, the pupil referral unit, that will be something that we would look at to come out of their either their grant funding, because they have some grant funding that they could use for that purpose, or looking at their budget to see whether they could accommodate that spend from their main budget.
Thanks. Yeah. Jumping on to 6.3, and it talks about targets. Just pictures to, what do you say about the fact that the target should be 100%, and the reasons for not achieving it would be scrutinised rather than putting forward? I know Welsh Government put targets forward and you try to say it should be realistic, but would it not be the case of we want 100% attendance? Obviously that is potentially pretty nigh impossible for good reasons, but what we need to understand is the good reasons why we can't get why the people are away. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, certainly it would be aspirational. My thoughts are slightly shaped by a conversation with Estin, where they had a very strong view about unrealistic attendance targets in one of our schools, and asked that both the school, the governing body, and the local authority review that target again, because their view was that it had to be aspirational and it had to be realistic. So it had to be something that the school could drive towards. Yes, definitely within the context of why haven't we got there, or what could we do differently, what could we do more? But our expectation would be that those conversations will be going on anyway. I think a target of 100% ceases to be a target, possibly.
Yeah. Okay, just for your information, when I back in September, when I was interviewed by Estin in the school inspection, I said exactly what I just said, but there about the attendance, and they didn't argue with me, put it that way.
No comment.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Finally, then, it says in what we need to do next, 7.1. I just wonder, because it talks about absenteeism and the number of FPNs. So is there a report available to show the level of absenteeism and the number of FPN generated for each school, as I think this would give a clearer picture of the impact of FPNs in the particular school catchment, other than across the borough as a whole.
Yeah, we can provide that. I mean, the data that we've got around attendance is exhaustive. You know, well, I mean, it's not exhaustive really. Just it's never ending. We can break it down in any way that's required, and we can then cross match with FPN information. So that isn't a problem.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
There we go.
Sorry, we do provide a full breakdown of fixed penalty notice information to all the schools, and we have done it by cluster as well. The fixed penalty notice information does go out half-termly to schools, so they provide you know, a full update with how many warning letters have gone out, how many fines have gone out, FSM, non-FSM, how many have been paid, how many have gone to prosecution, etc. So yeah, we can you know, we can provide that for yourself, but it does go out to schools as well.
Lawrence, can I just check? Is that what you need, or is it something slightly different to that? Can you just
No,
confirm?
what I'm thinking of, it would be nice to see each school in the borough, and as you say, what the FPNs were for that school, and if you say what the absenteeism is with that school, and we can correlate then the two of you. See what I mean?
Yeah, we can bring the two reports together. That's fine.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. I think actually I'm just being reminded that in my last governor meeting at Cyfarthfa, I think we had that within the papers. So I'm sure that would easily be available because it did give us sort of we were very competitive in Cyfarthfa primary then, looking at who was above us, as you can imagine, as I do so in Ysgol y Graig, where I'm also a governor as well. So, but yes, we were very competitive, just looking at it. And I had a very in-depth discussion with the head about the FPNs and who leads it. But I do know it's not the local authorities' fault with regards to that. It is a Welsh Government directive and decision that head teachers actually have to take the responsibility for it. So just thought I'd add that in there for our heads and our colleagues there. Okay, I'm going to come to Anna next.
Thank you. My first question is, to what extent do you feel that approaches to absenteeism are consistent across the borough? And if anything can be done to improve that consistency at this stage?
I'll start, and then Adele can jump in as well. I think we do have a fairly high level of consistency, but there's always room for improvement. So, for example, Welsh Government have just released a school attendance policy, primary and secondary, and so the discussions that we've had with a couple of head teachers is about preparing a digital template for schools, so that the schools and the governing bodies can then adopt a consistent attendance policy. Obviously, within that they would, you know, they would make it personal to their own school, but I think that would go a further step in terms of trying to ensure that consistent approach to some of those areas. There's also discussions going on around, without wanting to use FPNs, start another discussion, a consistent approach across our schools in terms of correspondence to parents and that approach. So there are areas where we're looking to bring greater consistency, and another area is in terms of sharing of good practice. So that model that I just referenced a few moments ago about a school that with grant funding from us had proved a way of working to be quite successful. We wanted to make sure that all our other high schools were aware of that, could contextualize it, could see whether it would benefit to them. So the aspect of sharing good practice, both at that level and also through the flow network, is quite extensive. But Adele, do you want to?
Yeah, I've gone to quite a lot of meetings in schools, and you know, had a look at their current processes and procedures, and there is a consistent approach around their graduated response in the way that they you know, a challenge and sort of look at attendance as well. Our half-termly attendance data go out to schools, and I know that that's been sort of used effectively when I've had conversations with schools you know, they are looking at the data, they are drilling down and looking at it more, you know, effectively with regards to looking at year groups and conversations around how they can sort of improve, you know, in a particular class, you know, what's happening with particular pupils. All the schools that I've been to, you know, are aware of what agencies are out there really, and they're all sort of, you know, sort of linking in with appropriate agencies as well. So there is a sort of consistent approach around their graduated response as well with regards to looking at attendance.
Thank you. And then my second question relates to parental expectations and engagement, and whether you think, again, there's suitable knowledge amongst parents of the impact of low attendance, and if anything can be done to improve that, or if anything has been done in the past on this issue.
I come in there before Adele and Gavin come in. A lot has been done, and we've still seen that if we're looking at persistent absenteeism, we have to get at those families, because quite often it's longitudinal, that apparently even the parents themselves were poor attenders at school. So one of the things that we're looking at is doing a focus in each of our high schools on persistent absenteeism, but including the parents, not just actually engaging with the children themselves, but with the parents. And you're looking at then how we work with Adele's team, with the community focused schools team, on actually this is what this team will do and this is what this team is going to do, and looking at it as a family as well. So if you've got children in the high school, young people in the high school who have got poor attendance, and they have younger siblings, quite often find the younger siblings have got slightly better attendance, but it's still not good. So what can be done with the family to try and crack the barriers and to crack it for those younger siblings coming through? Because it's looking at it differently. Our schools have been quite innovative in what they're doing, but it's how we can support them, but engaging with the parents to actually ensure that they can see the value of what's going on and how they can get support the children to go to school. But I'll hand over to Gavin and Adele.
Yeah, I think we've seen a change in mindset somewhat with parents as well since COVID.
Yeah.
I think we've seen parents, you know, reference things like, well, the teachers are on strike. Why should I send my children? And more than that, you know, during COVID, they weren't in and they were happy, and you know, it's now an option rather than a requirement. Historically, local authorities and Merthyr included have kind of gone with that sort of traffic light. If you miss this amount of days, you know, your education performance will be lowered, and if it's this, it will be lowered, and it's been quite kind of stark. I think the days of that being an effective approach with parents is probably gone. And how we go about re-engaging both pupils and families and parents in attendance of the children is such a key part of what schools are doing now. So some of the work that you know schools are doing is about engaging the parents at the earliest opportunity in quite a proactive way, to whereas previously it might have just been a letter or it might have been a text. Now actually, you know, sometimes it's an LSA appearing on the doorstep and just saying, hi, is everything all right, or you know, can we help at all? So I think we're having to change how we tackle family engagement quite a lot at the minute, and we haven't nailed it. Our schools and us, we're working hard with the grant funding we've got to be as dynamic as we possibly can, but we won't be able to do it just with education. So we're having quite good discussions with children's services, because obviously, you know, some families will have multi-agency involvement. We're looking at how information gets shared with health around attendance, because we know that if a pediatrician says, you know, maybe they would benefit from not being in school for a bit, then that sometimes they never come again, kind of thing. So we're looking at how we get that information out to as many professionals as possible, to just try and get the message across. But I think fundamentally we're dealing with some quite changed mindsets as well. Adele, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, very similar to what you've said, Gavin. Yeah, I mean, especially since COVID, you know, there has been a change in the mindset of parents, but there's obviously been increased sort of anxiety and mental health as well. So we've got a lot of pupils that have quite low attendance, large blocks of time off, with regards to them having high anxiety now, finding difficulties in going back to school. So as a team, we've had to change our mindset and sort of do more engagement work. So we're very much more joined up working now. We attend, core groups, for every family that my inclusion officer are working with. They'll invite themselves to core groups, they'll go to the core groups, they'll go to the home, they will look at having discussions with the parents, how can we move forward with a reintegration plan, and liaise between family and school in trying to put the best sort of bespoke package together in order for that pupil to be able to come back into school. That could be a reduced timetable, that could be looking at a bit of an alternative provision, 1 or 2 days in, doing something else out, and looking at, more of an engagement then, rather than straight down the line like we used to do, have worked before, with an attendance letter and a warning. I mean, that's obviously a last resort. So we will look at liaising with other agencies, see who's working with them, and have that sort of team, that sort of multi-agency meeting, and try to sort of try and reintegrate the pupil back in that way.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna. Okay, I'm going to come to Natalie.
That I tend to see this as not just, I think you're talking about as an individual parents and working with individual parents. What about like a cultural, societal mindset? Because that's, I think, what you're working with, rather than as well as individuals. So you can work with the individuals and speak to them, but if they are sort of coming from a like a herd mentality, that sounds, I'm obviously I'm a parent, so in all classes, but like a herd mentality around that mindset, what can the local authority do, if anything, to support the change in maybe relationship management, so that all schools can have the same kind of perspective to try and change that cultural mindset, the societal mindset? Any thoughts on that?
I'm just going to pass to the Director of Education.
Yeah.
No, I think it's, I think with quite a lot of this, I think we've got to a point where schools are saying we can't do this by ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think there's a part where I'm saying that education can't do it by themselves.
Yeah.
And I think, where we need to be better is that joined up approach with social services and with health as the big three, but then with partners like Barnardo's and SNAP, and with, somehow with Welsh Government, because actually, we had an all Wales meeting around attendance not that long ago, and exactly the same discussions that we're having around the impact of fixed penalty notices, in terms of the attitude of parents, in terms of grant funding, in terms of the changes in thresholds around persistent absentee. All of those discussions are going on everywhere.
Yeah.
And so whilst locally we need to do better at joining up with other partners and other agencies, I think there's a national agenda there that needs to be embraced by Welsh Government, and some of that will be acknowledging that actually, when it comes to trying to improve attendance, posters generally don't work anymore, but actually people on the ground is what works.
Yeah.
People on the doorstep works, that are trying to build the bridges, and that's where we've seen some of our most effective practice go on. But I don't have the answer to that, but I'm more than willing to be involved in any kind of looking at the solutions to that, for sure.
I'll join in that as well,
Yeah,
because
there is
I think it's a key
yeah.
thing. Relationship management, I think, seems to be something that, not just with this, but with ALNs we've discussed in community focused schools, so many things we've covered in all the scrutinies I've been in. Relationship management seems to be a key thing that we should maybe sort of have as part at the back of our minds in everything we do.
Yeah, there is currently a Welsh Government working group looking at attendance.
Yeah.
So watch this space to see what actually comes out of that, if anything new. But as Gavin said, it is the conversations that we're all having
Yeah.
that to actually improve, to pick up on COVID, to pick up those anxieties of parents and of children. How can we get back to? But pre-COVID, we were already having the discussions about how we needed to improve attendance. So we're going full circle and still having those conversations.
Yeah, I think you could be sort of banging your head against a brick wall if you are sort of speaking to individual parents, because that's what you should do when there needs to be, maybe from Welsh Government, some kind of societal relationship management process to sort of work on that, to change the whole mindset. The other one I wanted to ask about was poverty proofing, and sort of other things. Do you think if the financial implications of coming to school are causing many problems with children when it comes to uniform or needing to have badged uniforms, because some schools, you know, it's compulsory to have badged uniforms or badged uniform items, and certain PE kits and different things. Cost of getting to school, you know, using the bus, are they things that have been considered as well and looked into or being discussed?
We have discussed those with our head teachers, and when Welsh Government sent out, I think it was last year or the year before, they sent out the uniform group, the
fairness test.
yes, we've discussed it with that, and we've spoken to our head teachers about it. A number of our high schools will actually have their sort of used school uniform which is available, and they're not as strict is the wrong word, but then they don't sort of enforce that you have to have badged uniform for everything. Now there's still too much of a focus on badged. Well, actually, white t-shirt and navy shorts is, it doesn't have to have the school badge. You can still take. So that's a work in progress with some of our head teachers and governing bodies to actually, when they go out, when they go to play a game, you want them to represent the school and you want them to know. But how do you do that without every child having to have a badge? So how do you manage that? But certainly it is something, and it's something that we've looked at with the high schools, with catering. Are there a lot of children not attending on the catering day because they can't actually afford the catering? So it's things that is unpicking that pattern of attendance, to actually say, and then having that conversation with the parents. Well, you're not here on a Thursday and a Friday, on a Thursday and a Tuesday. Why? But it's you point out, it's the relationship. You've got to make sure that those parents are confident and comfortable enough with you to actually say, you know what, I can't come on that day because actually I can't afford the PE kit or can't afford that. So it is about that your relationship and developing that with parents. The bus is a different scenario. We are statutory minimum for our school transport, but we are aware that certainly in a particular area of the county, they fall within the 3 miles. I'm going to say the 3 miles or within, but actually the buses, there's a significant number of those children that need a bus to get to school, and they're struggling with that. So it's looking at grants and things like that, and actually seeing how we can support parents.
Thanks. The temperature in this room, apologies, is obviously keeping us on our toes. So I'm feeling bitterly cold at the moment. So apologies for that. Perhaps we can do it, sort something out for any subsequent meetings this week. And I think we could have done with Gavin in the recent Six Nations. It hasn't concluded yet. I know that we're playing France on Sunday. But with that pass, Gav, we could have done with you up front. And perhaps we would have scored a couple of more tries. I thought it was fantastic.
Well, now I know that's the approach.
Yeah, very well. Straight to your left. I don't know if it was a forward pass or not, Gav, but when I'm more of a football girl than rugby, but well, I'll give you that one. Anyway,
there's a back heel chair.
Okay, I am going to conclude questions with Councillor Claire Jones.
I actually, when I saw that Jamie left, I contacted Jamie to see whether there was anything he wanted to ask. So he said that he was going to ask whether or not we're looking at the SHRN data comparatively with reasons for absenteeism. And what he said, Sue, was he could chase it up with you, but I said I'll mention it in the meeting, so at least you know what his question was.
So he's looking at the Shern data, is it?
Yeah.
So secondary.
Secondary, yes, because it's only secondary schools, because the primary Shern data is they're only just starting it roll out. We do look at the Shern data. We look at it, we get it at a local authority level, and then each school has it. So we do use it. Do I think it's particularly effective at the moment? No, probably not, because because the dashboard has only just been fully developed. So it's in its infancy how we actually utilise that to support schools and families.
Thank you. Just in case he emails, you know why.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Hannah also mentioned a couple of questions in the pre-meet last week, but I'm happy to say they have been covered because I kept an eye on that as well. So unless there are any further comments, the report asked us, I'll keep an eye out for those, but the report asked us to obviously discuss and note the contents of the report of which we've done and to consider if there are any other aspects of attendance we wish to scrutinise. Similarly to the ALN report, undoubtedly it is a discussion for our forward work plan, but just noting that we will have a response regarding CLAR children for Claire and Jeff. You'll let me know some of those other questions so we can get some answers on those for you as well. And we also talked about some data as well, didn't we? But we'll follow those up. Okay. So on that note, Adele, Jill, thank you. Gav, Sue, as always, go and practice those passes now, Gav. Thank you for your attendance today. You're more than welcome to stay with us because we are going to talk about the forward work programme. However, Sue and I will have our quarterly technical meeting at the end of this month. And obviously, as I said, I do sit with the officers along with Gareth when we talk about the forward work plan. So happy for you guys to depart if you so wish. You're welcome. So, as our colleagues do so, the next item on the agenda is the forward work programme. And obviously it is for us to discuss items set out in that. So just bear with me a second. So our next meeting is due to be on the 22nd of April. And when we come to agenda items, slightly in a different order, but when we come to agenda items 6 and 7, obviously some of these will also relate to the forward work plan. Okay, so just bear with me. But with regards to the forward work plan, 22nd of April, we're looking at transition arrangements against all key stages. Okay, because if we remembered, and I know Jeff, this is something you're particularly passionate about, is those transitions really from year 6 into high school, etc. And then obviously for our year 11s being a tertiary model, you're in Merthyr Tydfil, County Borough, year 11 into college as well. So and also linking into that, hence why I said I may just jump back and forth, also linking into that is we do want to have that visit to the college prior to this meeting. So I'm trying to think of the most effective way to do that. I guess we'll liaise with the college with immediate effect now, get a couple of dates and then try and see where the majority can meet with the college, if that's okay. So that's what we'll do with regards to the 22nd of April, and just being mindful of some of our scrutiny visits, etc., is the college one. Obviously, as well, we have additional items for consideration in the forward work plan. We want to continue, if you remember, that discussion around PRU and TDUSCI moving forward. So we'll include that within the next cycle. And also a review of the catchment areas for school came up last time. So just to touch upon that. But before we do the reflection, we can add into any observations that you guys have, but just mindful that ALN is something we're going to have to come back to. It's so vitally important. So we will do a review of that at, an opportunity within the forward work plan in the next cycle, and also attendance, because it's so critically important. It has a massive impact on standards, doesn't it? It has a massive impact on individuals' own achievement and attainment, and also their own sort of well-being, health and well-being across all aspects of it. So it's so vitally important that we're always mindful of it and we always come back to it, because what we've spoken about today, we want to see some of those new ways of working, if they genuinely are working in the future, and if not, why not, I guess. Okay, any questions or observations on the forward work plan before I move on to the next agenda item? No? Okay. Oh, Lawrence, jump in.
Yes, I don't know whether, as you see, you got it still recorded somewhere. We did mention a couple of things previously under the headings of ed psychology services and to be considered.
It's Oh, sorry, Lawrence, it's agenda item sorry, it's agenda item number 6. So it's the next agenda item that we're coming on to, which is scrutiny referrals. That's all right, don't worry. But it's opportune to talk about it now. It's absolutely fine. So we've got safeguarding under that, which is a joint workshop with social services for the forward work plan. So it does link in, and you're right, because this is about why we're jumping around really, and also Ed Psych as well. So we will also include that within the forward work plan and prioritise these. So for instance, that safeguarding and Ed Psych, we'll do those sooner rather than later within the forward work plan, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks.
That's all right. And back to you. Did you have another point there, Lawrence?
No, just on those 2 points, actually, safeguarding and the EdSIC stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. Natalie, I'll bring you in at that point.
It says on here that we've got consider next workshop cycle, the whole school approach as well. So we're going to be looking at, would that be a workshop that we'll do? We still planning on doing? That's towards the top, yeah.
Yeah, apologies. I was just jumping my screen to the agenda. So yeah, we will include that one as well then. So I think if I may, with a little giggle, I think we're already full next year, actually.
I think that links in with safeguarding, Ed Psych attendance, ALN. I think that one is a key one for bringing all those things together.
No, definitely. Don't forget, we've got our self-evaluation workshop on the 14th of May as well. So looking forward to being very busy again in the next cycle. But, you know, it's what this scrutiny is about, isn't it? But yeah, there's, I think, you know, off the top of my head, already, I think we've got, you know, 8 really good subject areas to look into for the forward work plan, including those scrutiny referrals that Lawrence has just touched upon as well, you know, so we'll be mindful and take those forward. I'll make sure that when I meet with Sue and the officers and Gareth as my vice chair, that you know, all of those are listed, ready to discuss.
I think a comment worth mentioning with the attendance is that some schools now have introduced attendance committees on the governing bodies. So going forward, when we look at attendance again, there should be, or there may well be, more information that can feed into that at that point based on the committees.
Yeah, definitely, and hence why I said we were so competitive in Gyfartha Primary, because I sit on the attendance.
I know the feeling as well. But I wouldn't
Gyfartha Primary, so perhaps I had more information perhaps than my other governors, is what I'm saying, because I sit on that committee. But it is really good. It's very insightful, and I'm certain it's something that we could bring back as well. Okay, thanks, Natalie. Jeff.
The forward work programme, I do think it's important that we try to hold a space for something unknown to come up. Yeah. That might require us, because one of the problems you'll be aware of, as I am chair, that very often we discuss things and then it's because of how busy we are, it gets put further down the line, and it's not as effective as it might be if it's done earlier to the time when it's happening. So perhaps we need just to keep a date free that we could actually put something in if we should need to.
Yeah. So just to remind colleagues, and especially some of our newer co-opted members as well, as you know, it's always an agenda item. It's a fluid document. It's ever evolving because things arise. So, you know, and through the nature of the way that we work as a committee, with both our task and finish groups, but also with our workshops as well, something may come to us and we think, actually, this is more or more of a sense of urgency for us to review or scrutinise. And then, you know, I can remember back to sort of June, July last year, where we were moving around the agendas for September, you know, because of data that would be available to us, or information that would be available to us. So there's always that availability of it. So whilst we do have those recommendations and we have them within the calendar, if you like, of the cycle, always available to move them around or add in. And I think where that's happened in the last 12 months, we've done that via having additional workshops as well. So always available to do that. Okay. Next then is scrutiny referrals. Lawrence has just touched upon that, and obviously just to be mindful of that safeguarding and Ed Psych. And then reflections, agenda item number 7. Again, today's reports, as I've said, I've already touched upon it, that we need to be mindful of these and consider these for the forward work plan, because they're two of the main subject attendance always, but certainly ALN since the bill came in has been something that we really do have to revisit. And as I've said, there were a couple of questions today that we need to chase officers on, and also some data that needs to come back to us as well that we've requested. So has anybody else got any reflections with regards to today's meeting? Lawrence, I'll come to you first of all.
No, just to echo what you just said, as you said, a number of areas which you covered, which was very interesting and informative. But ALN is certainly an ongoing topic, and I keep I'm involved and keep hearing about the concerns in schools regarding that particular area, which is going to be, I think, a subject which we need to keep monitoring for the foreseeable future. The other thing I was going to ask before I leave it is, will there be any information coming back from the Eston inspection that Jeff and I attended regarding the Education Committee?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Lawrence. I also had a one-to-one as well with regards to that particular inspection. I think Sue will have had some feedback on it, and then I think I'll ask that that update be shared with scrutiny members via information report via email, if that's okay with everybody. I can see some nods and Lawrence nodding as well. So yeah, I'll make sure, Lawrence, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, colleagues, we'll move on then to agenda item number 8, which is feedback on scrutiny committees. As I've said, we just need to do that college visit and the self-evaluation workshop we've got on the 14th of May. And then last but not least, agenda item number 9, any other business deemed urgent by myself. I have none. But obviously, let me just should Jane just give me a little note on my notes? Bear with me a second. Right, okay. At the next pre-meet, I'm going to be asking if you've got any of the business. She's preempting it and making sure I do a good chairing role. So at the next pre-meet, we'll just do that as well. Okay. And thank you for today, by the way, because in the last pre-meet, and obviously Nat and I discussed it via email, I'm just thinking of the flow of scrutiny, because you are so good, I have to say, and I do commend you. Claire, I'll come to you in a second. Sorry, I didn't see that. 2 questions each, if we can be mindful of that. Keep any subsequent questions just to allow all colleagues just an opportunity to ask those, because sometimes, as has happened today, get my teeth in, they have been answered sometimes, haven't they? So I'm really grateful for that, you know, but I'm also really grateful that we don't take away from that and we still ask some really pertinent questions and dig deep as well. It's really important. But also that the opportunity where Jeff's got quite a few, you know, and Lawrence asked those ones on ALM where we can gather information. It's quite nice to have that as well, reading through Lawrence's, you know, yesterday. So that was really useful. Okay, Claire, come to you.
Mine was just a comment because Lawrence, I appreciated your email because I found that so much better seeing that before I come in. And 2, your questions, please can ensure we all have them, because I think you're going to have some pertinent questions for us and I would be so interested to see the answers. So saying that, with you asking 2 questions, Lisa, it's been really helpful knowing that emails have been sent, the questions have been answered, and I really did appreciate what Lawrence says and what you are going to do, Jeff, so thank you ever so much, and that's all I got to say. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm sure we're all in agreement with that. You know, it certainly helps. And as I said, I really can't thank you all enough, because you really are really good members of a scrutiny meeting, both councillors, co-opted members alike. I'm really, really appreciative of all that you do. It certainly makes this robust, and we can really take actions as well. And we'll do some reflection on the year, looking back, when we meet together in April. Okay. So we'll do that. Okay, on that note, diolch. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us, and I shall see you soon. Thank you very much.